Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wellness Wednesday. I my name is Donner today. I have a couple of treasured friends that frequently refer to me as Donner, either on purpose or because of their accent. So today seemed like a good day since it's the last Wellness Wednesday before Christmas to don, see what I did there? Don my reindeer antlers. Good morning, Miss Carla. Good to see you. And come at you this morning with a message about the movie The Holiday. So if you're just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna, not Donner. And I am a wellness advocate, a grad school student, a mom, a nana. Thank you, Miss Carla. A reindeer sometimes, and always an activewear fanatic. And looking to uplift people. And the reason I started Wellness Wednesday is because I have spent a lifetime battling with depression and anxiety, and thought that sharing my experiences along with encouraging you to share yours is the best way to help people, because sometimes we really learn from others more than we learn from ourselves or from books or whatever. So today is the final part of our 4-part movie series. A few weeks ago, or probably a couple months ago now, I decided it would be fun to do a movie series. There's a church in Illinois that did biblical messages from Christmas movies for the last 4 weeks before Christmas. And I thought, well, why not wellness messages? And I was pleasantly surprised at what I found. I had a couple of movies in mind, but I also did some Google searching and found a couple that I was actually quite delighted to find on the list. So far, we've talked about The Grinch. We've talked about a few variations of A Christmas Carol. And last week we discussed an animated movie called Arthur Christmas, which I thought was just absolutely fantastic. So today we're going to take a look at one of my favorite movies, which I've never really thought of as a Christmas movie, even though it is called The Holiday. It's one that I'm happy to watch anytime during the year. And it is called The Holiday. It's a romantic comedy with a little extra. So this is not just about romance, y'all. So if that's what you're thinking, just stick around. This one today's message is primarily for the ladies, but guys, if you're watching, feel free to take notes for future reference. It has an all-star cast, starting with the top 4, which are Jude Law, Cameron Diaz, Kate Winslet, and Jack Black, but there's a few other familiar faces littered in there as well. So before I get started, if you're here, let me know you're here. If you don't see this till afterwards, hit hashtag replay in the comments. And I chose this particular one to end with because it does have a little bit of a message that's going to lead into next week's conversation. And because we haven't covered a rom-com yet. You know, you think of holiday movies in terms of family movies and children's movies, and we did cover 2 of those. But this one has a couple of special messages. So The Holiday was released in 2006, which was pre-Airbnb. And it was based on the premise of something called a home exchange, which, probably, isn't really what Airbnb or VRBO looks like. But it's a nice idea. And what home exchange means is that, you basically exchange your vehicle, your car, and essentially your life, for a period of time with somebody else. And that's kind of what happens in The Holiday. Okay, not kind of. That is what happens in The Holiday. So again, a great cast. And I just want to say a couple of things about some members of this cast. Jude Law, I never really paid a whole lot of attention to. He was in a couple of movies with Robert Downey Jr., who is my first movie star true love, who I think is just phenomenal. And everybody thought Jude Law was just so wonderful and so hot. And until I saw this movie, he really wasn't on my radar. I'm not one to look at movie stars as good looking or somebody I would necessarily like to spend time with. I tend to look more at their acting abilities and what they bring to the table, Robert Downey Jr. being the exception. But there is a scene in this movie where Jude Law looks at Cameron Diaz across a crowded restaurant with kind of a half smile on his face. And I just, right then and there, just completely fell in love. I was like, who is this guy? Cameron Diaz is another one. I've never been a huge fan of hers. I just I always kind of thought she was overrated, but in this movie, she is gold. And of course, Kate Winslet is always an interesting character, and of course, Jack Black as well. So, like I said, there's a few other familiar faces littered in this movie, and it's definitely worth the watch, even if you don't do it before Christmas. So one of the first messages I get out of this is that it's important to take time out. Amanda, which is the character played by Cameron Diaz, is she's a high-powered movie trailer producer, I think is her actual title. And she makes a lot of money, but she works a lot. Good morning, Miss Stacy. She works a lot. She is ending a relationship because her boyfriend, her long-term boyfriend, Ethan, who's quite the cheeseball and kind of a narcissist, it has cheated on her. She's a workaholic, which probably contributed to the negativity in the relationship. She's extremely high anxiety, which I can totally identify with. And she literally dreams in movie trailer format. Like, in the scene where she's in the first class plane, taking her flight over to England, she is dreaming about her life in movie trailer format. And it's hilarious and it's unique and it's different. And it kind of demonstrates the level of anxiety and workaholicness, if you will, that is present in her life. And that it also demonstrates that she definitely feels like something is missing there. And according to the movie trailer narrator, it's, somebody special, basically. So much so that her employees and colleagues are shocked when she says they're taking Christmas off, because that's a new thing, totally unheard of. And essentially she's frustrated with her breakup, and she's getting online to look for someplace far away to go so that she can escape from this. We can all appreciate the desire to escape at any time of year, right? And she ends up on this home exchange site, exchanging chats with Iris, who lives in England and has this idyllic little cottage that I'm going to tell you right now, I would love to spend a month in. It's just amazing. So that's a little, it's important to take time out. And Amanda is a demonstration of this, because essentially every other part of her life is falling apart because she spends so much time focusing on work and perfect movie trailers and the whole 9 yards. So that's a little bit about Amanda and the first thing that I got out of it. The second thing that I got out of it is actions speak louder than words. That message is huge here. Maybe not for somebody that's not looking for it, but because I've personally experienced how important it is to decipher the difference. This part really spoke to me. So most specifically, this is in terms of Iris, who is the other lead character, which is played by Kate Winslet. And this man, she is the queen of unrequited love. She does the wedding column in the local newspaper, and she is totally head over heels in love with somebody else in the hello, Dennis, nice to see you. She is totally in love with this gentleman, we'll use the term loosely, Jasper, who also works within the newspaper. And they've had an off and on again relationship that has been pretty much one-sided, although he has said and done enough, good morning, Dawn, and just enough to keep her on a string. Who has been in this situation before? I know that I have. The situation between Iris and Jasper specifically spoke to me, because Iris, as a columnist in a newspaper, her love language is words. I mean, the movie doesn't say that. That's pretty much what it boils down to. Her love language is words. That's how she works. That's how she thinks. That's how she speaks. And I have often been the same way. And there is often, especially with unhealthy relationships, a big difference between words and actions, huge disparity. And it took me a very, very long time to learn that. And I would often cling to relationships that I shouldn't have because of what they were saying, instead of paying attention to what they were doing, because frequently their actions completely were the opposite of what they were saying. But I was always hung up on the words because I've always been a word person. So in the case of Iris and Jasper, there's a Christmas gift exchange. There's a holiday party going on. She hasn't turned her work on in time. So she's in her office and he shows up in her office and he says he has a Christmas gift for her. And she says, oh, so do I. We're doing this earlier this year. And she pulls a wrapped gift that's ready for him out of her drawer. And he says, oh, well, I don't have it with me. So think about the actions versus the words there. That's just one example where he says that he has one for her because he's very manipulative. But when push comes to shove, she's the one doing all the things. He frequently relies on her for help with editing of whatever he's writing. And he's still toying with her. And then after this exchange in her office, he goes out, they both go out for an announcement. And that announcement is that he's getting engaged to someone else that works for the newspaper. So huge actions versus words here, which you see a lot between these two, throughout the movie until Iris gets her head on straight. And that's all I'm going to say about that for right now. Another situation where actions speak louder than words is Jack Black's character, Miles, and his girlfriend, who I don't remember her name. She is a familiar face. She's been in a few movies, but right off the top of my head, and I don't have it in my notes, I don't remember the character's name or the actress's name, but you'll recognize her when you see her, I think. Jack Black plays this amazing character, depending on which reviews you look at. Some people think he's kind of a butthole. But I think he's just extremely misunderstood. He's very specific about the things he likes. And his girlfriend is essentially the trophy girlfriend. She looks great and he thinks that he doesn't deserve her, because she's trying to come in as an actress. She's beautiful. She's thin. She's all the things you would expect somebody to be hung up on. But in all reality, he's got a very warm and in-depth personality. And you can see right away that these two don't match up, that she finds his overtures like kissing her hand kind of annoying. And she's very cold and aloof with him. So you can see right away there's a problem there. And then, of course, there's Amanda's ex, Ethan, who has cheated on her but is lying about it and turns the whole end of their relationship back on her. So actions speak louder than words was a very hard lesson for me. It's really important if you are in a relationship to make sure that you, excuse me, morning stuff clearing out, that you are paying attention to the actions and not so much the words. And when they match, it's a wonderful thing. I can promise you that. But if you spend a lifetime in negative relationships where you never really understand what happened, then maybe it's time to look at what was said versus what was done and see if you were so blinded by love that you were paying too much attention, or are, whatever the case may be, that you are paying too much attention to what is said and not enough attention to what is done. Because one of my favorite sayings, and it's not word for word, is I never trust words. I sometimes trust actions, but I always trust patterns. And that's where I've come to, but I haven't always been that way. That transpired in that great year of change that I experienced around 2016. And I definitely pay attention to that, especially when my anxiety starts to get the better of me and I start focusing in on words instead of what's really happening around me. So great message there. Number 3 that I got out of it is in unhealthy situations. And I know there's somebody out there that's going to watch this today and that's going to need to hear this. In unhealthy situations, no response is usually the best response. So part of the problem with Iris and Jasper is that she can't stop. Like, he dangles the carrot and she always runs after it. Where in a lot of situations, like when she's on the plane headed to California because she and Amanda have worked out this home swap, right? And she's headed to LA from England and Amanda's headed to England from LA. She's on the plane and already getting a text from him. Now, he's just gotten, yes, Carla, I think that's really, really huge, is trusting patterns. So almost never words, always actions, and even more so than actions, patterns. So Iris is on this plane headed to LA for the first time. She's never been there. It's way far away. She's looking forward to getting away and trying to get over Jasper. And he's texting her on the stinking plane. And she responds to him and says, I really think, basically paraphrased, of course, because I can't remember everything verbatim as many times as I've seen this movie. She says, I need to try to get over you. It would be great if you would let me. But here's the problem. It's easy to blame Jasper because he's really not a nice guy. He's just not. He just got engaged. He's still toying with her feelings. He's very well aware of how she feels about him. He's taking advantage of it. He's keeping her on a string. Probably more so for her help with editing his writing and stuff than actually any kind of attraction to her. But sometimes people like this, and I'll say people, not men, because I've known women like this too. Sometimes it just makes one feel better if they always have somebody waiting in the sidelines, right? But what could Iris do to take control of the situation? Well, and I've been guilty of this. I've had conversations with many friends who have been guilty of this. And this doesn't necessarily have to be in a romantic relationship either. This can have to do with any kind of unhealthy relationship, especially a bullying one where people are coming at you constantly, pushing your buttons, whether it's your guilt buttons or your romantic buttons or whatever. Sometimes the best response is no response. Just don't respond. Because a lot of times people like this, if they're not getting a response out of you, they're going to go away. It may take a little while and it's hard, but that first time that you ignore the message or the phone call or whatever, that's the hardest time. It gets a little easier each time. I've been there myself. I speak from a personal place of having been in this situation where somebody that I definitely should have let go of, that the relationship was negative and healthy, I just couldn't stop responding when they reached out. I saw them reaching out as some kind of surreptitious, deep down desire or longing, when really what it was just looking to keep me on a string. Okay, so in unhealthy situations, oftentimes no response is the best response, and that's okay. Because a lot of times, like I said, it doesn't even have to be romantic relationships. It can be bullying situations. I had somebody that I kind of worked with that was very much a bully, and I learned to stop responding. It was very difficult, and I had to have this conversation with a friend of mine as well, actually about the same person, that just don't respond. Not everything merits a response, and like I said, sometimes no response is the best response. Number 4, your relationship status should never define you. And again, people who are married or in happy relationships, stay tuned because there's a few more messages here. Don't just assume this is about romantic relationships and their faults and geniuses, okay? Your relationship status should never define you or your happiness. When Amanda and Iris have their first exchange online about this home swap, Amanda identifies herself as a loner, a loser, and a complicated wreck. So clearly, the end of her relationship and the way that conversation went with her ex, where everything got blamed on her, she is now using to define herself, even though she is very much an intelligent force to be reckoned with. And oftentimes, very strong women, oftentimes men think they want a strong woman until they have one. And then when she doesn't need them, that can be problematic. It's actually a very common scenario. And in the case of Iris identifies herself as very normal and kind of rolls her eyes because she's been crying nonstop since she left the office that night after the Christmas party. So she kind of rolls her eyes when she says very normal. And she also, right before the messages came through, she was lighting the stove, the gas stove, to make tea, and she was actually considering just letting the gas continue over a person. And I don't want to specify guy or gal here because this is broad, okay? Your identity should not be based on the person you are with or not with. It should not be based on your relationship status. When I was in a support group for depression and anxiety after my divorce, or during my divorce rather, and to be clear, I was the one that asked for my divorce. So I still suffered a lot of anxiety and depression and feelings of failure because of it, even though I was the one that initiated it. So when I was in one of the first steps towards me learning about relationships, and it still took a long time to sink in. And again, not just romantic relationships. Sometimes our friendships can be pretty toxic as well. And we can be fairly dependent on them when we don't necessarily need to be. So one of the most important things I learned in that support group was, there was another woman in the support group who said something so profound that day that it has stuck with me till now and probably will the rest of my life, which is that she had to learn how to be the whole cake and that a relationship was just the icing on the cake. Good morning, Drew. Nice to see you. So she had to learn how to be the whole cake and that the relationship was just the icing. And that is a really important thing. And I think that more people than not actually experience this. We grow up and our identity is centered on whatever everybody else tells us it is as we are growing up. And then we become parents and our identity is centered around our children. And then when our children are grown and out of the house, our identity is centered on what? It's centered on our relationship, on our marriage. We're somebody's wife, we're somebody's mother, we're somebody's husband. And we often neglect to find who we are and be true to that. And hopefully if our relationship is a good one, then our relationship grows with that and you grow together. And I see the rare couple, I know a few actually, who do that. But oftentimes we tend to never find ourselves because our identity is always wrapped around. And I know mine was, especially when I was a late teenager and an early adult. If I wasn't in a relationship, I felt like a loser. I felt like Amanda, loner, loser, complicated wreck. I felt like something was wrong with me and that nobody would ever love me, all based on whether or not the man that I had my eyes on was looking back. Instead of how I am now, which is I know my worth and I'm strong in my own self and my beliefs and my dreams and the things that I want. And I am blessed enough that once I changed that mentality, I actually began attracting to, I won't say began because there was one. And that's who I'm with currently, that understood that and was ready to grow with me and embrace that, instead of me changing who I was and becoming everything that this person would believe in. But at one point in time, I didn't think I was worthy of someone like him. And that was because of how my identity was based. So your relationship status should never define you. And this can apply again to friendships, familial relationships, whatever. It should never define you or your happiness. Your happiness comes within. And depending on your beliefs, it comes from your higher power, whatever that means. So Amanda's a loner, loser, and a complicated wreck. And then Iris responds with, I'm very normal, a neat freak, a non-smoker, and single, which is where she starts crying again. So you can see that both of these women are very, very much focused on defining themselves by the relationships they are or are not in. Number 5, the more you tell yourself you can't, the more you're not going to be able to. This is like the Henry Ford quote, no matter whether you think you can or can't, you're right. One of the quirks about Amanda is she's so high strung and she's put up these walls because her parents died when she was younger, that she can't cry. She hasn't cried since her parents died. But one of the things that I notice, and we've talked about this a few times on Wellness Wednesday, the whether you think you can or can't, what you look for is what you will find. And Amanda repeatedly tells everybody she can't cry. And in a situation where she's breaking up with Ethan, she's literally standing on the balcony yelling at him, trying to cry. And he's making fun of her, essentially, because she can't cry. And pointing out that there's something vastly wrong with her because she can't. And she's trying. She's sitting in front of the computer trying to cry. And she's on the balcony trying to cry. And her whole world seems to be kind of focused on this thing that she can't do. So what do you think she's going to find if she's constantly focused on this thing she can't do? She's not going to be able to do it. She's not going to find it. She's going to be constantly forcing it. So the more you tell yourself you can't, she also, when she meets Graham, which is Iris's brother, which is the part played by Jude Law, she tells him and herself that she's not going to fall in love. It's very, very difficult to be open to the magic. You can't find magic if you are not open to it. Good morning, Miss Kim. So you can't find magic if you are not open to it. And if you're not open to it, sometimes it can be right under your nose. or find you when you least expect it, but it's usually when you stop looking. Usually when you stop looking, which was where I was at when I found my boyfriend. I was done looking. I just was in a place where I was happy with myself. Good morning, Miss Ann. I was happy with myself. I was happy with the way things were going. And I didn't really care for the first time in my life if I was in a relationship or not. And then all of a sudden, there was something right under my nose when I stopped looking. But when I became open to more things in my life in general, to more experiences and to more magic. So the more you tell yourself you can't, the more that's going to be true. What you look for is what you are going to find. If you walk out the door every single day convinced that your life is cursed and that nothing ever goes right, guess what you're going to find? That nothing ever goes right, because you're going to be focused on the bad things that happen, and they're going to hide the good things that are right under your nose. So you see how this is not just about romantic relationships, right? Okay, so another thing I learned, which was awesome about this movie, is the most special friendships come in the most unexpected ways. So while Iris is in LA, she sees an elderly man. She has seen him a couple times already, and she sees him out wandering with his walker. His name is Arthur, and she offers to help him find his way home because he looks lost. So he's got a little bit of dementia. He is an elderly screenwriter from like the golden age of the movie era. And she becomes friends with him. Because she thinks he's interesting and funny. And when she takes him home, she finds there's I think it's a Grammy. Is that what they call the Academy Award? I think the golden statue. You see how much I pay attention to the celebrity world. There's one of those sitting on somewhere on his desk, and he's got things piled everywhere. But he's a very interesting man, and he's a very funny man, and they click right away, and they become friends. And the story that ensues there, this underlying story that occurs with Arthur and Iris, is just absolutely amazing. And she takes away some kernels. I mean, that relationship was well timed, because that friendship kind of becomes a turning point for her, because she learns things from Arthur that apparently she just didn't have a good enough friend anywhere else to tell her. So very wise. Again, another key that we should revere our elderly. And I should be careful because I'm 50 now. So at some point I'm probably somebody else's elderly, right? But the most special friendships come in the most unexpected ways. And of course, towards the end of the movie, you find that Amanda and Iris actually end up being friends, and we'll go there later. So I don't want to spoil the whole movie for you if you haven't seen it. But if you have seen it, watch it again from a different lens. Because as many times as I've watched it, I wanted to watch it again to refresh my memory, and I only made it about halfway through before I fell asleep. But I was exhausted that day. And it was the second or third time Eric has watched it with me, and he commented again. He stayed awake through the whole thing and commented again what a great movie it was because of the messages that are in it. So the most special friendships come in the most unexpected ways. And also, when Iris and Jack Black first meet, obviously Iris is otherwise preoccupied with Jasper, who's a pain. And Jack Black has this girlfriend that's aloof. But Iris and Jack Black, Miles is an employee or a colleague of Amanda's. So Iris and Miles start spending a little bit of time together, and you can tell there's a little bit of a chemistry there. They're both just genuinely nice people that have allowed themselves. Yes, I said it's called The Holiday, Kim. And there's some great messages in it. It is a rom-com, but there are some fantastic messages in it in general, and it's super cute, and it's got an all-star cast. Definitely a great one. So Iris and Miles form this friendship, and you can just tell they're both two genuinely fantastic people that have allowed themselves, and notice I use the words allowed themselves, to be stomped on, because people treat us how we teach them to treat us. So they develop a great friendship that blossoms into something more. And in my opinion, that's the best way for a romantic relationship to develop, is when it starts as a good, solid friendship. And I had always heard that when I was younger, but never believed it until it happened to me. So, the most special friendships come in the most unexpected ways. I know that to be true. Once I became open to that magic and didn't tell myself I could only have one friend and she wasn't allowed to be friends with anybody else, that kind of thing that we have a tendency to, when we're high anxiety, we have a tendency to be that way, right? Once again, in this movie, children have a funny way of being the smartest ones in the room. So Graham, which is the character that Cameron Diaz meets, that Amanda meets, and Graham also happens to be Iris's brother. He is actually a widower, and he has two young ladies that are his children. And he very much compartmentalizes, which I can deeply appreciate from my own experience after my divorce. He is not interested in parading a line of women through his children's life, so he compartmentalizes. When he has someone to watch his children, because he is a widower, and he's also a book editor, so they're all kind of in a similar world, either book editing or column writing or trailer producing, but when he goes out on the weekends that he has somebody to watch his children, and he kind of cuts loose and he kind of does whatever he wants, and he does some one night stands, and from that angle, he seems like quite the cad. But the other side of that, because he compartmentalizes, is he's very much a nurturing and caring father whose whole world revolves around his children when they're in front of him. And they're super cute. And then they're even cuter because they have a British accent or some kind of an English accent. But Amanda unwittingly shows up at his home. And at first she thinks he has someone else there because he's hesitant to let her in. And then when she does come in, she finds out he has two children, and they all have a conversation. And these young ladies are kind of in that time. They're probably 8 or 9 years old, I think. And they're in that time where they're probably really missing their mama, but maybe more so missing the presence of a female role model. Now, I absolutely condone and support Graham's decision to compartmentalize. I have been there. I have done that. I think for the sake of our children, whether it's a divorce, a split cohabitation, or a widow type situation, I think it's good for our children to focus on them and not parade a line of, I've always believed that. And if that's not how you operate, I'm not in any way, shape, or form condemning you for it. This is just my personal feelings, so I can identify with Graham's decision to compartmentalize. But also when Amanda, they end up inviting her in for cocoa, and she's dressed very nicely. So they comment on how she looks like their Barbie doll. One of them does. And they invite her in for cocoa. So it's this really cute, short kind of bonding session with his children that was unexpected and unplanned. And during this session, the girls say something very specific. I mean, they're very enamored with Amanda. They invite her into their special tent, their fort, which is the most beautiful fort she's ever seen. They're enthralled with her lip gloss and the way she smells and the way she's dressed. And then they make a comment, and the comment is, oh, I'm going to get emotional. Oh, sorry. We never have adults who are girls over. So in that moment, what you hear is that those children are missing something. They're missing something. And while their mother cannot be replaced, I don't know, maybe they don't see their Auntie Iris enough, or they're just looking for something else. But you can hear that without saying so, they're kind of missing something that may be becoming important with the age that they're at. Now, does that mean that if you're a widower, you should run out and find a replacement for mom? Absolutely not. But our children will give us cues. I very much compartmentalized to the point where I would tell my daughter, when I did start seeing someone seriously, I would tell my daughter that I would leave it up to her when that person was allowed to come over. And quickly realized that I was giving her a little too much control. And so I had to do some backpedaling and some kind of reverse zabida on that. But our children will let us know, when they're not ready. If you pay attention, because they also know how to push mom and dad's buttons, they also tell us when they are. They're very wise. So like I said, while I completely support Graham's decision to compartmentalize the way he did, if he was willing to let her in, it was clear that Amanda was becoming very special to him. And although he was put in an awkward position, he could have said, listen, here's the deal. I didn't tell you I'm a widower. These are my children. You have to go because I don't allow anything to interfere with our time or change the way we are. But it also kind of let Amanda know that he was not quite the cad she may have originally thought he was when he was getting phone calls from these girls and said that he would call them back later when they were together. So, once again, children have a very funny way of being the smartest ones in the room every time. And they also, I think they're pretty good at knowing when somebody's good and when somebody's not, right? Okay, so the final thing that I learned, and this is a quote direct from Mr. Arthur, Iris's elderly friend next door. You should always be the leading lady. And you'll love, let me start over. You will love this guy because he's got some great tidbits about the golden age of the movie era. And as you know, even fiction is often loosely based on truth. You should always be the leading lady of your own life. And that goes for men too, because I know some men who are not the leading man in their own lives. We are too busy being the friend. We are too busy being the helper. We are too busy serving. And serving is wonderful if it's done in the right way. But if it's done in such a way that we're using it to hide and not be responsible and take charge of our own lives, and find our worth and stand up for the things that we love and the things that we believe in, then we are not being the leading role of our own lives. So I thought that was profound and extremely empowering, especially for those of us that struggle with negative relationships that are not healthy and we have a difficult time letting go of them. So those were the items that I got out of it. I'm going to wrap this up because I know I'm a little bit over on time, but absolutely, truly a great movie. There's some parts that will make you cry if you're that person, sometimes even if you're not. There's some great humor in it. Dustin Hoffman makes kind of a cameo appearance, sort of. It's a fantastic movie. The cast is amazing. And I want you to remember these final lessons from the holiday, overarching type stuff. Know your worth and don't settle for less. No matter what type of relationship it is, even if it's your relationship with yourself, this is really important, y'all. Even if it's your relationship with yourself, know your worth and don't settle for less. If your dreams are what they are and you see an opportunity to pursue them, you should absolutely do that. You can find a way to make it work if it's something you really want. So you should absolutely be the leading lady or the leading man in your own life. Not just the supporting cast, not just the best friend. You should absolutely be the leading lady and the leading man, or the leading man in your own life. And if you watch the movie, you'll understand that statement once you have it in the context of the movie. Don't cling to a mistake because you spent a lot of time making it. Unhealthy relationships, unhealthy jobs, any kind of unhealthy situation. Don't cling to a mistake because you spent a lot of time making it. Number 3, it's okay to take a chance. Everybody in this movie is taking a chance. They're taking a chance on something new after they've been hurt or harmed. They're feeling beat down. And it may take them a little bit to get there, but they are taking a risk by doing something completely outside of their box. Either flying to another continent to get a break and a change of scenery, or taking a risk on something they see possibilities in, even though they've been very hurt and very closed off for a while. It's okay to take a chance. It's okay to take a chance. You know, if you're not a fan of your job and you're not ready to quit, don't quit. But it doesn't mean you can't start something on the side to kind of see what else is out there. That's what I did. Now I'm in grad school and I have my own online business. And I work part-time for an organization that feeds my grad school experience. I could not be more blessed. But it's because I took a chance. I took a chance and I saw an opportunity and I decided that that was the path I wanted to go down, and God kind of pointed me down that path. And so I took a chance and I did. I left my job of 21 years. I am not recommending you should do that, but I am recommending that you should take a chance on exploring options that are out there, even if it's just a little bit at a time, okay? That's a great message for the coming year. And finally, it's healthy and sometimes productive to escape temporarily. Get a change of scenery. If you're in a bad situation, you might need a break. If you're a workaholic, you need to get away. Take a vacation, take a break, put the phone away. Travel. I traveled for the first time, and I can't tell you how many years in 2015, and it literally opened up doors that had been closed for so long you couldn't possibly imagine. So it's healthy and sometimes productive to escape and get a change of scenery, but when that's all you focus on, it can become a much bigger problem, which is what we're going to dig into next week. Just in time for the new year, which is, let's think resolutions on steroids. Okay. So those are the messages that I got out of the holiday. But overall, if you don't want to watch it with any kind of message hunting in mind, it is a fantastic movie with a great cast. Really not a kid's movie. Definitely your typical, I won't even say typical because I think it's really not. It looks like your typical rom-com, but it goes so much deeper than that with the different relationships. But it's fantastic. You'll get some little old golden age era tidbits from the movie scene. And listen, you'll really enjoy Arthur and the way these characters interact with him, especially, and the wisdom that he has. So if all else fails, there is definitely wisdom for anybody, regardless of your relationship status, to be had there. And if you found this helpful, I invite you to share. This 4-part movie series has been fantastic. If you missed any of them and you can't find them, scroll back on my page or let me know and I will be happy to tag you in them so that you can find them. Also, if you go to my Facebook page and you click on the videos, you should find the whole succession of Wellness Wednesdays, all 62 episodes, including today. And next week, we're going to talk about destination preoccupation. That's what we're going to talk about. And it goes, whatever you're thinking it means, it probably goes beyond that. Because I know it looks different for me now than when I first heard the term. So next week, we're going to talk about destination preoccupation just in time for the new year in relationship to your New Year's resolutions. And in the meantime, Donner wishes you and yours a very merry and safe Christmas, and I will see you next week. In the meantime, have a fabulous Wednesday and be well. Bye.